Okay, now it's recording. Okay, so I have a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to cram it into 19 minutes. Recommendations to read in this video. I just finished 2 books within the past couple of weeks. That was Superintelligence and This Will Make You Smarter. I liked Superintelligence better. It covered, machine intelligence and other types of cognitive enhancement for society. So, that's related, but the third book is what I would like to go into, and the fourth book, the one I'm currently on, I'll go into a little bit if I have the time. The book Epigenetics, including the author Joel Wallach. I got into a discussion on Facebook concerning one of the conclusions drawn by his research, and it lost me a friend. Although, given the circumstances, I don't think that they were very friendly towards me. I guess a little bit of personal information. If you haven't seen the other video where I talk about my friend suggesting some sort of malevolent stranger and about my ex, citing my mental health or whatever, my friend might have also. Okay, so the argument is made once let's recap this. Okay. I made a post on Facebook saying cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, and probably Alzheimer's or Parkinson's were all not genetically inherited or caused genetically. That they could, or if they have a genetic factor, I didn't say this, but what I'm saying now is that if they have a genetic factor, somehow that factor can be overwritten, can be precluded or nullified by nutrient supplementation, meaning it can be cured, more or less. Nobody said anything about this post. So I made a second post. I thought, it didn't get people's attention. So I thought Down syndrome was a big deal. I thought these other diseases were a big deal, or conditions were a big deal. So I said, something a little, more likely to get people to go, oh, wait, is there something there, or is this person wrong? Am I to educate them, or am I to educate myself? That's what I thought the reaction would be. That was a wrong assumption. What I posted was homosexuality, intersexuality, and cleft palate, and autism. They are, they can be biochemically fixed. They can be biochemically prevented, basically, is what I said. And somebody who I thought, was a friend of mine who had, my best interest in mind, and who saw me, more or less how I am, said, this post is so fucking crass. I said, what about it is crass? How should I have worded it? And she said, you shouldn't have worded it at all. It's an opinion. I said, it's not an opinion. It's scientific fact that you can prevent these things. And that's all I'm saying. I asked her, how is it an opinion? And she said, it is an opinion because you told me that you're not on your medication. All right. Talking about the book, now I'll go on a little side tangent here. I already said in another video what the situation was with my medication. I said it in the video where I talk about my friend, talking about how I should blame some malevolent stranger, and my ex questioning my sanity. She says I should question my sanity. Unfortunately, my friend up until that moment, and unfortunately, my ex still probably doesn't have all the information about that diagnosis. And the one that came before it, which was more accurate and actually spoke about the possibility for that diagnosis, but ruled it out because it wasn't accurate to my symptoms. So, like I said before, the diagnosis that has around 10 days of observation in a clinical setting and an interview or two says severe depression, a lot of stress, and environmental factors which led to a psychotic break. Not a prolonged psychotic state, but one state brought on by stressor factors and a severe depression, which led to vulnerability and so on and so forth. But this friend, trying to get back to the topic, said that because I'm not on medication, I am not credible. She said she wouldn't take anything that I have to say seriously, and that I should think long and hard about why she can't take anything that I say seriously. First off, that's an ad hominem. You know, it has nothing to do with the argument. It has nothing to do with the facts. It has nothing to do with the science. It has nothing to do with my sources. It has nothing to do with it, period. If I was to say, you know, I think that Down syndrome should be prevented, that's an opinion. Saying Down syndrome can be prevented, you know, ask me about my facts, the research, you know, ask me about my sources, is not an opinion. And so I ended up losing that friend. She told me, you know, she was unfollowing the thread and no longer responding because I was going in circles by saying that, you know, she was attacking my character and not focusing on the facts. She said, it's not an attack, you know, you're not level-headed, you considered it an attack. I said, okay, maybe the word attack isn't, you know, the best word, maybe it's accusatory to you, but it is the word that is used when somebody uses an ad hominem. It's like going after somebody's character rather than looking at the facts to try. If you make a faulty statement, the fault is in the statement. It's not in the person who makes that statement, and therefore it's completely distracting from the point to go after the person's character. Yeah, so that's all I was saying. But she said, you know, I'm not level-headed, I can't be believed. Anything I say is, she will dismiss, she will, you know, not pay attention to it because I'm not on the medication. She sent me a message later saying that, you know, most clinics are, you know, they'll work on a sliding scale and you can pay them a low fee and, you know, I think you should get help. As if I had just posted about some sort of hallucination I had or something, or, you know, said some really racist commentary or something like freaking, what's his name? Watson, or was it Crick? Either Watson or Crick, the scientist behind the discovery of the double helix of DNA, and, you know, who based their research off of Rosalind Franklin's, you know, images. Like, it's like if I was, you know, like when one of them said those really racist statements on public media, and later they said they regretted it. But that was an opinion, and that was like, are you on something, or should you be on something when they said black people are inferior to white people? Um, but that's not what I was saying. I wasn't saying anything along those lines. I wasn't saying, you know, uh, Down syndrome people are inferior. I wasn't, oh, the ones that will likely strike that politically correct tone note or incorrect tone or note, the homosexuality or intersex or autism even. Um, I wasn't saying that those states are wrong. All I'm saying is look at this science that says that these states, these conditions, these things can be prevented simply by supplementing the mothers with the appropriate nutrients. I mean, that's saying something, and the implications might be, well, if it can be fixed by supplementing nutrients, then maybe these states are not natural states of being. Maybe these things are not ingrained into the DNA if they can be prevented by something other than DNA and something so simple as nutrients. So, maybe those are the implications and stuff. But, yeah, I lost a friend that way, and like I said in the thread, I lost a vegan friend for saying that beekeeping was not exploitation of bees. Even though I think we have a responsibility to control their populations. And what happens when honeybees, European honeybees, first off an invasive species, non-native species at least, they may be, right, anyway, what happens when they accumulate a surplus of honey? They swarm, you lose a lot of the strength of the original hive, and you lose a lot of the bees, and, the health of the colony generally declines as it splits off, it buds off and forms a new colony. Sometimes more than one new colony. And, somewhere far away, it could be in the wilderness, could be somewhere where it's competing for resources, competing for honey or nectar and pollen with other native bees. It becomes a problem on the environment. So I think like spaying and neutering your cats and dogs, culling the honey rather than the bees is a check and balance system to keeping bees if you really must have them. A lot of the time, crops can be pollinated by other bees, other insects. But people also like the honey. So I think it's a symbiosis, it's a win-win. And I lost a friend for trying to, when I was discussing, this thing with Elizabeth, with them, Elizabeth, happens to use the term pedophile often, especially when she wants to put somebody down. I was trying to make the distinction of, these different paraphilias, these unusual attractions. Could be like you're attracted to a couch. People like that exist. There's people who are attracted to animals. Those people exist. And I'm not talking about furries, although maybe some furries have paraphilias too. So I was saying, there's different categories for people who are attracted to, different age groups and stuff. And so it would help the public discourse if children wasn't applied to anything other than biological children. And she said, no, if you're under 18, you're a child. I was like, in some countries, the age of consent is 19. So what does that make anybody in the U.S. who says, right, so I was saying, child should be child, biological child, as in the individual hasn't hit puberty, and therefore that makes them a child. Different hormonal changes and stuff like that come in at different stages, and therefore you can't assign it based off of age. So that lost me another friend. Yeah. So now to the fourth book that I'm reading, and some things I've only read the first part so far, so like about 60-something pages in. The book is The Republic by Plato. And back in its day, it was made into parts based off of the printing methods they had. Basically transcribing methods. They didn't have the mechanical press, and so these books are in small chunks. Right. So, I heartily disagree with Plato's naivety in stating that the state's function is to, or the ruler's function is to serve the people. And that's point number one. Point number two, he also says that the just people who serve and follow justice or morality is better than and leads to happier lives and is better in every way than the unjust or the people who are perpetrating injustices and are immoral and generally not good people. So he says good people they benefit from being good, and the bad suffer from being bad. In his own time, there are examples of governments, to the first point, not serving the best interests of their people. There are tyrannies in some of the city-states to Greece. He was an Athenian, which was a democracy most of its time. And so for him to say that the government acts in the best interests of its people, it has the people's best interests in mind, is like saying all these other instances of the government behaving wrongly, it wasn't the state, it wasn't the government, it wasn't the rulers, but it was. And he knows that. In fact, one of his mentor, one of his teachers, one of his inspirations, Socrates, was put to death by one of those institutions in the state of Athens. So can he really justify saying the government acts in the best interest of its people? Maybe in an ideal, that's what it does, but that's not the evidence that history gives, and especially recent history for his time frame. How would those tyrannies have gotten to that point of becoming tyrannies if they had the best interests of their? And so what Tim Marcus, or I forget one of the other characters' names, what he says is, the state serves its own best interest. And I think history to this day, including what we know about prehistory, shows that institutions of government favor a wealthy, powered elite, and those people rule over the rest, and they further their interest at the expense of the rest. They get their power from them, and at the threat of losing that power, at the threat of losing that what is the term? At the threat of losing that power, we'll go with that, they will confer rights to those people to keep them complacent, to keep them compliant, to keep them contributing in that social contract of, give and take. So the state has to allow more things to the public in order for them to maintain or increase the rule that they have. And that's what one of the other characters was saying, and I believe I agree with him. And now the other thing, that the good do better than the bad, that's simply not true. You see in a lot of societies that when an element or elements arise that are inherently, self-interested, they will exploit the complacency of the less selfish. And they don't suffer from making other people suffer. They are happier for it. Much of the time, these people don't have a sense of ethics. They don't have a sense of empathy. And therefore, they're able to do this and not feel remorse and not feel some sort of nagging or detriment to their health or their well-being because of it. They don't suffer. And yeah, I'll try to leave it at there. Ideally, we would see, a just society, but I don't think that, so far I don't agree with Plato. We'll see if in the rest of the book he convinces me. He's starting to, in part 2, talk about society and how societies are inherently good or benefit from being good. And I agree that the group dynamic, is the source of, ethics and cooperation. Egalitarianism wouldn't exist without a group. And I think evolutionary biology, behavioral evolution, and behavioral biology reinforce the fact that it is being in a group or having a sense of higher purpose or belonging to something greater than the individual, whether it be a family unit or society, an extension of that family unit instinct, makes people good. But you see in animals like the cuckoo, not the dodo, that selfishness is a successful evolutionary strategy to a certain point. Cuckoo birds lay their eggs in